fucking Baskin. All right, we're recording.
Oh, it's recording?
Yeah, I just started.
Oh, we're back with part 2. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh.
Welcome to me trying to record with Evan every time.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. I hope you listened to part 1 of this Tiger King extraordinary episode of Your Queer Story. Today we're back with part 2. And before we start talking, I just want to remind you that I am Samantha Taylor, Evan's beautiful wife. And I'm here with Evan Jones and Paul Hobbs. We would like you to subscribe to this podcast on any platform you see fit. Download if you are able, and follow us on all social media. We're at Your Queer Story.
I think that might have been the best intro we've ever had.
Just cut and paste that into every episode.
Yep.
So yeah, we're not even going to talk too much. We're not going to do a what'd you do this week because we've got so much to cover.
You know what we did this week? We sat inside.
And we've done nothing.
We sat inside.
It's true.
And argued. Probably. At this point.
A lot of arguing.
A lot of cooking.
A lot of sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
All that good stuff. Don't have Tiger King to entertain us anymore, so we're just
I know,
hanging on
now-
to the last
Well, I
threads.
have watched it twice, so.
Yeah.
And
So
you
now-
watched it twice, really, because you went back and watched it the second time.
I did a speed watch.
You watched it.
So now basically, since like Tiger King's over and there's nothing else left, everybody's about to go on. It's going to be like the riots. Like this is going to be the part where society starts to fall apart.
The riots are going to happen regardless because of the fact that the government thinks that fucking $1,200 a month is enough to sustain people. Not even a month. Just like, okay,
You know
this will probably last for 6 months, but here's $1,200.
Right? Have you seen the things where people are like, I can't survive on $1,200 a month, blah, blah, blah. And then people are sharing, well, with minimum wage, if you multiply it by 40 hours a week times this, guess what? It's $11.60 a month. And you guys are all against fucking raising the minimum wage. So how do you think everybody else fucking feels, you assholes?
Exactly. There's your livable wage.
Yep.
To get us back on track, Paul, I would like you to please tell us more about Carole Baskin.
Carole fucking Baskin is a bitch who murdered her husband.
Wow. We allegedly.
Oh, yeah. She has a lot of money. She allegedly murdered her husband.
She sued a poor broke man into the ground, so we're not going to fuck with her much.
I know. We don't know too much. We don't know anything to be true.
Right.
Exactly.
Everything mentioned in this podcast is speculation. All parties involved are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and we are not accusing anyone of anything other than what the documentary presented.
And the other evidence that has information that's available out there. But yeah.
This is why we need to form a legal business.
So, who you want to start, Paul?
Sure. Carole Baskin was born on an Air Force base in Bexar County, Texas on June 6, 1961. Like Joe, she didn't have an ideal childhood and ran away from home at age 15, hitchhiking from Florida to Maine. She slept underneath cars until she could afford her own truck and then slept in the back of that with her pet cat. At age 17, Carole got a job at a department store and fell in love with her boss, Michael Murdock, who seemed to have been several years older than Carole. The two were married soon after they moved in together because Carole feared the consequences of living in sin and probably wanted money.
Well, yeah. I think that the whole thing with Carole is that she spent her life looking for a savior, but she also couldn't settle down. Like she wanted an exciting life, and anytime something was exciting, she'd get bored. But also she needed someone to supplement her because she didn't want to do the rigors of just establishing a career.
Right.
So
she wanted to be taken care of.
Exactly. She wanted to be taken care of, and she wanted to be able to do whatever she wanted. And so at 17, she thinks she's found that with this department store manager, which doesn't sound good, but okay.
But Mike beat her regularly and obsessively tracked her moves, going so far as to track the odometer on her car. The one solace Carole had was her animals, and soon she began to rehabilitate injured bobcats. Which, could you imagine, like, okay, you were only supposed to go to the grocery store today. Why do you have 7 miles on your car instead of 5? Where else did you go?
That's exactly what people do in domestic violent relationships, though. They will track your odometers, your mileage to see where you're at. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a DV situation, call the National Domestic Violence Helpline, and we can give you some tips on how to avoid that. I'm not going to say it here in case there's any asshats listening. So one night, Carole fled her house in fear of another beating from Mike. And as she walked down the street crying, a man in a car pulled up and asked her if she'd like a ride. This whole story is the craziest fucking thing Do you know, do you remember the whole story about Carole meeting Don?
Yeah. How she gets in the car. This is She gets in the car, and wait, no.
He tells her. Because she pulls up and he's like, she's like, you want to get in the car? She's like, no, as a sane person.
Oh, yeah. And then he puts the revolver on the seat and he's like, you can shoot me if I do anything bad to you.
Yeah. And then she drives with the revolver in her hand. He takes her a little farther. He pulls over to the side of the road and he chokes her. And he's like, I could choke the life out of you. But she looks at him and she wasn't scared. At least that's what she told the reporter later. So then he takes her to a hotel, but they don't have sex. They just lay on the bed and they talk and they fall asleep. And that was her first night with this man.
I believe the choking part of that story, and that's about it.
Yeah.
If somebody's choking you in a car when they met you 20 minutes ago, they're not just taking you to a hotel and...
I mean, the thing about, like, how she grew up, maybe she was into that. I'm not going to say that she was into that, but, like, if she grew up in a... Like, maybe that made her feel excited. Maybe she flooded her basement a little bit.
Well, I think that in general, like I said, she really craved excitement. And so that, as scary as it was exciting. And, again, she's being beat by her husband regularly. So if it was true that a guy... just semi-choked her and then laid next to her in a hotel, that seems very romantic. So, I don't know, but whatever it was, he asked to see her again, and she said, okay. He told her that his name was Bob. So, this was from the Rob Moore, he was the journalist, his article that I really suggest you read, Tiger King, Joe Exotic, The Modern Barnum, and His Equally Extraordinary Nemesis. The man told her his name was Bob Martin. Since they were both married, they had to have their clandestine meetings in a trailer at his work site. When Bob pulled into the lot, he would make her, Carole, lie on the floor of his truck so no one would see her. She thought they were hiding from his boss, a rich businessman named Don Lewis. Whenever she called him at work, she would ask his secretary if she could speak with Bob Martin. One day, a different secretary answered the phone. When Carole asked for Bob Martin, the secretary said she'd never heard of him before. Carole described him, a middle-aged, blonde hair, blue eyes, and the secretary laughed. Oh, you're describing Don Lewis, the secretary said. Carole realized she was having an affair with a millionaire.
And then she was like, bitch better have my money.
For the next 5 years, which is a long fucking time, Carole continued to have an affair with Don Lewis before the two finally left their spouses. For a while, the couple raised, breeded, and traded exotic animals. I don't know if this is in here, but the video that the guy gives the documentarians where Carole's like, most people think it's cruel to take away a baby tiger from its mother. But to socialize them with people, it has to be done.
Yeah, that lifeless, there's no soul there.
I know, it's so creepy.
Never has been.
Then in 1992, they changed their tactics and opened Big Cat Rescue in Tampa, Florida. It was Carole's dream, and yet life was not a dream at all. Don was stingy with his money. He never even bought Carole a diamond ring.
A real diamond ring. He gave her a cubic zirconium.
Oh, okay, sorry. He would go dumpster diving for day-old bread and held his money over Carole's head. He also cheated on Carole as he had his previous wife, and she was expected to accept these terms. The two began to disagree on how the animals should be treated as Carole began to realize their tactics were harmful and even cruel. Don saw the animals as a way to make money, so the couple fought constantly. Finally, Don began to tell Carole he wanted a divorce. In July of 1997, Don filed a restraining order on Carole, claiming she threatened to kill him. And a month later, he mysteriously disappeared and was never heard from again. When confronted about the restraining order years later, Carole shrugged the incident off and published a statement on Big Cat Rescue website. Don spent 1 week per month in Costa Rica. Don was a man who wanted to have sex daily. He would go to Costa Rica during that week I was having my menstrual cycle. I accepted this as something I had to live with. During the week he was away, I would haul off the property, as much of the junk as I could. Wendell told Don I was doing this. Don tried calling the police to get them to stop me. They told him he would need a restraining order. It is unclear if it was Don's idea that to get a restraining order he should say I threatened him, or if someone like Wendell suggested that. Don filed for order on June 20th, 1997, and it was denied. I don't know. I'm sorry. I just have to say this one last piece, but I don't know if it's also written in here about how my favorite part. Oh my gosh, I love this part so much. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited to talk about it. After 5 years, he was declared legally dead as a missing person. And the reporter says to Carole, "Did you have a memorial?" And she's like, "I remember I got the death certificate in the mail. And I looked at it. And then the next thing I remember, it was pitch black out. It's like I had just blacked out. And that was the closest thing I had to memorial."
Yep.
Like, what the? But that, just say, "Oh yeah, I made his favorite dinner that night in remembrance of him." Like, make some shit up, Carole. That makes something up. That is not a good thing to say to a reporter. That sounds like pure bullshit. Just fucking, you could have said anything that sounded better than that.
Yep.
Like,
my memorial was just, I don't know, it was nighttime.
I was like, I just stood there and that was it. I think Carole Baskin hated Don, but I don't think it was. I think it was a deep hatred, but because like Joe Exotic later gets a hold of Carole's diary,
and how does he get a hold of Carole's diary?
I think that probably one of either Carole's staff members or somehow Don's children got a hold of the diary from some of her assets.
Yep.
But whatever. But she writes a lot about how awful Don is.
Oh,
and
he's an awful person.
he is an awful person, and to expect a woman to have sex with you every single night and then you cheat on her repeatedly, like, I mean, there is definitely sexual abuse there.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
I definitely believe 100% that she was abused. Like, there's no way that. I mean, she lived her whole life like that.
Yeah, she lived her life being from one abuser to the next.
Also, Don's ex-wife and daughter look like they're the same age. So
That's true.
I just had to add that in.
Right? You look at those two and you're like, wait, who's the mother in this?
I know. Half the time I was like, which one of them is the daughter? It's not making sense.
I don't know.
The timeline doesn't add up.
Yep.
Anyway.
But I think that Carole, like, she's in this, but she's as awful as it is, she's also in the best situation of her life. She's doing the career she always wanted to do. She has millions of dollars, and if she leaves Don like she left Michael, she's going to have nothing. And she doesn't want to give that up.
Right.
And that's where you see the real motivation. Like, yeah, he was an awful person. This wasn't like some poor animal lover that just disappeared. He was a piece of shit. Again, every main person is a fucking piece of shit in this documentary.
Yep.
So go ahead.
So there.
Anybody that keeps tigers that need, hundreds of thousands of yards of freedom in captivity, clearly their moral compass is off. So that's you're starting there. So of course everything else is also going to align with like having no moral compass because you're keeping tigers in 5-foot cages. So
Yep. So there are several reasons that Carole's statement doesn't sit well with most people. Aside from the fact that Don wanted a divorce and then suddenly disappeared, he also told friends and his secretary that he feared for his life. And then, immediately after police were notified of Don's disappearance, a never-before-seen last will and testament showed up, which not only made Carole power of attorney rather than Don's secretary as the previous will had stated, but an interesting line had been added at the top. It began with, "In the event of my death or disappearance," which was an odd line to have in a will and is rarely, if ever, seen by lawyers and judges. And even his lawyer said, like, I've been doing this for, 40 years, or I don't remember how many years, but he's like, that's the only time I've ever seen that.
Right? Like, how is that not so obvious? That's the thing.
And then my favorite is, like, however many episodes later, she's like, well, clearly, like, if you wanted to get a tiger to eat somebody, you have to, like, I don't know, cover him in sardine oil or something like that.
Oh, my God. It's just so, like, whatever, even if she didn't kill him, she definitely tampered with some stuff afterwards.
Yeah, she was like, I mean, but the thing is, even if she didn't kill him, which I don't know if she did or not, even if he disappeared, she made sure she was fucking set. Like,
oh yeah, that's what I mean.
She noticed he was gone, and she was like, "Fucking get this taken care of."
Take advantage of this, yeah. In case, but who would? But in the event of my death or disappearance, but I would never put that.
Let me
in a
tell
will.
you, if I ever go missing and that's on my will, something fucking happened. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm putting that out here right now.
I'm telling you right now, David did some shit.
Yep.
Got it. So sadly, Don, well, I don't know if it's sadly or not, but whatever, Don was never found in 5 years, and one day after his disappearance, Carole had him legally declared dead. During that time, she continued to run and expand Bobcats Rescue. Don's children estimate they only received 10% of Don's multi-million-dollar estate. Carole also began dating another man, Jay Bacall. So she's dating this man like while Don's missing, but he hasn't been declared dead. Jay filed a restraining order on Carole in October of 2002, and he wrote in the report, "On the phone and at home, told me she will kick my ass out of here, whatever it takes. I honestly fear I'm in danger of death or serious bodily harm. One day she said to me when I asked her, 'What happens if your husband shows up now?' Her response, 'Dead body cannot talk.'" And yeah.
Well.
Yeah. So we have a picture on there of the restraining order too, which was also from the source Robert Moore.
I would just, for everybody that can't see, because this is a podcast, as Evan gets more and more intense while he talks, he pulls the microphone closer and closer to himself. So that's a fun image. Okay. A month after Jay left or fled for his life, Carole met Howard Baskin at a fundraiser event. I can't, literally cringing right now as I'm reading. The two began dating and married 2 years later in a small and quite odd ceremony. They have been happy ever since, and Howard is definitely Carole's biggest supporter. Yet still, the rumors and questions surrounding the disappearance of Don Lewis have swirled around Carole for the last 23 years, becoming one of the most exciting stories of the exotic animal world. Here are a couple of other interesting moments in the episode.
Wait, I didn't even get to comment on Carole's wedding picture.
I was gonna just... Go ahead. Go ahead.
You go ahead. You say it.
Where Don is in a Flintstones-esque leopard costume, and Carole has him on a leash in her wedding dress with her flower crown and is walking him down the beach.
What?
Yeah. My favorite, that's one of my favorite memes. Like, if the love isn't like this, I don't want it.
That moment, jarred me really. That was the first moment that really shook me hard. Because when I saw Howard crouched down like that, this man in his fucking 60s wearing that suit, crouched down, and I'm like, but what message were you trying to send with that?
Right.
Because what is it? She's got him on a leash, or are they into BDSM? What is the message? And I wouldn't be surprised because you have to, that's the exotic animal world. Even fucking Carole Baskin's got to have some kind of kink because you just do.
So we're just going to highlight a couple other interesting moments. We watched Joe's famous Here Kitty Kitty music video. Brilliant. I mean, crazy and stupid and brilliant all at the same time. Carole laughs about how she couldn't even fit a hand in a meat grinder. Yep. Don's lawyer decides to wear a polka dot tie from either the early 90s or a clown troupe. And we get to really see the bizarre living rooms and decorations in people's houses during their interviews. Yep. And that's the lead homicide detective at the interview. He has the fucking, what are those kind of masks? What are those called?
Theater
creepy.
Masks. Yeah,
creepy masks. Yeah.
Creepy masks, the monkey statue, there's just so much.
And the maybe tattooed eyeliner or something. His eyes are very, very profound in a way.
I don't think he's a baby. I don't know.
I mean, even the fabric of the cushion of the chair, it's what is going on in this house? There's just so much
It's such a creepy house. You can't see the corner where the cat is the coffee table. Maybe it's not his house, but if it is, how are these people so obsessed with cats? And who is decorating that house and what is going on? I don't know.
I don't know.
Also, I want to know how Joe found that such a good Carole Baskin lookalike for his video.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was dedicated, so I'm sure he just fucking searched and searched and searched.
I don't care how much it costs. I don't care.
Which I don't know where he was getting all this money from anyways.
Nobody knows. That's one question. How did Joe Exotic stay
he was
afloat?
selling the tigers, so that was probably good money, but still the cost to feed the tigers alone was astronomical. So maybe he was involved in the meth business. I don't know.
It's just it's so much money to run all of that. And even though his employees were paid shit, the stuff that he did still
running
cost
for
so much
president
money.
and all kinds of crazy shit.
Also, I would would also like to say that I like that in the documentary they don't really mention the meth until about episode 5, and I like that because the whole time you're watching it, for me, I don't know what the percentage of this is. Like maybe some people were watching and already thought these people are all on meth.
Oh, I did.
And
I knew from episode 1.
Thought, yeah, because you're from Gary, Indiana, and I thought from the beginning like these people are doing drugs. I mean, I didn't think they were all just like living sober lives, but also when they start to get into the meth, all of a sudden I started to be like, oh.
Which,
yeah,
okay,
I see it now.
I know we're not there yet, but one of my favorite scenes was when they flash to the police detective and they're like, yeah, for some reason meth concentrates in the mouth, in the teeth, and we call that meth mouth. And then they go to Joe's husband and he's like,
with his 3 teeth.
Oh,
jeez.
So
and where did he get the money for all the meth?
I don't.
That's so much meth to keep 2 men hooked to you, and who knows who else is getting meth. I mean, Travis's mother was clearly coming down from something during the funeral, which I feel very bad for her about saying like people use drugs to cope.
Clearly, yeah.
But she was clearly on something. So like, how much drugs were you giving to people, and was that really the reason why so many people stuck around?
I don't know.
Because $100 a week, even if you're a convicted, even if you're a convict, I mean, you could find something for more than $100 a week.
Mm-hmm. So we're moving on to episode 4, which is titled Playing with Fire. And in episode 4 of The Tiger King, we get into the real reason there is such a hatred between Joe Exotic and Carole fucking Baskins. For years, the two had antagonized each other through their individual social media sites and Joe's cable show.
Also,
Joe's show that he is sober and he's like, yeah, I cast this on to the World Wide Web, and really like 80 people are watching it.
Because only 80 people watch cable. There's not that many people that watch cable.
No, it was on the internet.
Oh, is that okay?
World Wide Web, but only like nobody was actually streaming it.
But my favorite thing is the delusion of like
exactly. He thought that his show being on the World Wide Web meant, but like I could cast a show onto the World Wide Web and 3 people could watch it, and I could be like, I have a show on the internet.
Right, exactly.
I think it perfectly shows the difference between him and Carole too, because she knows how to handle and talk about her social media.
Yeah, and she grew millions and millions of followers. I don't know millions, but at least
2 million followers. 2 million,
yeah.
And Joe calls his web show a cable show, so that shows the very big difference between them.
So Joe began to superimpose Carole's photo onto offensive pictures and spread an image of big cat workers holding dead bunnies. Which I don't know why they would take and post a picture of them holding dead, bloody bunnies. Like, that's probably not the best. Like, I know these cats, obviously, that was probably their feed, but, like, that's probably not the best picture to share.
Yeah, I don't know why they ever took the picture. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, it's just a dumb picture to take.
It is.
Like, how is that supposed to look?
Right. So Carole and her husband sued Joe for $1 million for copyright infringement and defamation of character and won. And now we begin to see Joe really unwind.
I mean, it's so hard because he was so aggressive. Because
he
feel
was
bad,
really aggressive.
He was so bad. Like, can you imagine a person just every day trash talking and telling people on the internet how you should die and how they're going to kill you?
Yeah, seeing a mannequin that's supposed to be you getting shot. Like, how are you supposed to feel about that?
Exactly. When you really step back, like, yes, they really spin Joe to be the sympathetic, but he's threatening this woman, and even if you're like, well, he's too crazy to do anything, so fucking what? That's scary.
He's like, I'm gonna put her head in this jar when I'm done. Like, if somebody was saying that about me, I'd be like,
exactly.
Can somebody do something about this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, people hated her, but like, also you can't do that. So
So this is where it starts to get really crazy, and we have the alligator arson, as I like to call it. And one night, the TV studio that, and I have air quotes around TV studio, that doubled as an alligator pit. So again, I mean,
it goes back to that thing of I have a shed with the bathroom in it.
Exactly, it goes back to the shed with the bathroom. Yep, from episode 1. Yep, mysteriously went up in flames, destroying all footage and all alligators inside. Alligators were John Finley's favorite, and most were the babies of an alligator Joe had got from Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch after he died. Shut the fuck up.
It's true. It's true.
John.
Hang on, pause right there. So that's just a point of like, So like Joe and people like Doc Antle, but especially Joe, is he would get animals from these celebrities that bought these animals when they were young and cute and couldn't take care of them anymore. So I mean, yes, you can say that these sanctuaries or zoos are the problem, but they're really picking up from all these rich assholes that think it's fun, like Shaquille O'Neal, who thinks it's fun to buy a tiger, and then you can't take care of a full-grown fucking tiger, and so then you give it back to people like Joe Exotic and Doc Antle.
What else are you gonna do with it? Kill it?
Yeah, exactly.
At least it gets to live, and
so and like it's like we stop this trend of thinking that it's okay to buy exotic animals.
Oh, smoking 16 packs per interview is Rick Kirkham. Joe's cable show producer believes Joe set fire to the studio so Kirkham couldn't use the footage he owned, and he was going to use the footage to make a reality TV show. Robert Moore interviewed the case officer who oversaw the investigation of the mysterious zoo fire. The officer turned out to be Joe's limo driver and later went to prison for sexually assaulting a disabled person. So, what the fuck?
So, because, like, you know, you're going in to investigate the arson and, like, nothing ever comes back. Like, they know that it was an arson, but nothing ever comes back into why, like, who the person was. And it just seems a very weird
you
coincidence.
even get to see the interview with Joe's lawyer where Joe's like, so there's no backups of the footage?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what to do. And Joe's just like, yep.
Yeah, exactly. Like Moore says, like in the documentary, they imply that it could have been Joe or other people. But Robert Moore talks about how like it was Joe and everybody knew it was. You just didn't have the hard evidence.
Right.
But like the whole coincidence of like the person who's leading the investigation is your fucking limo driver. Which what are you paying your police officers?
Right.
That they have to double as a limo driver for Joe Exotic.
Well, I mean, Joe, this isn't in the same place, but Joe was the police chief at 19, so I'm assuming that these people aren't getting paid that much.
I'm guessing.
Kirkham claims, this is all really good, so listen carefully. Kirkham claims that there is footage of Joe killing animals for fun or just because he lost his temper. Once, a woman dropped off her elderly horse and asked Joe to let the animal run in the fields. As soon as she left, Joe shot the horse in the trailer and made Kirkham film it. Then he laughed and used the meat to feed the lions and tigers. No fucking shit. Rick Kirkham fled with a few items and his dog. 6 months later, his home in Dallas mysteriously burned down and his dog died. Kirkham was in therapy for 6 months after leaving the zoo and spent a week at intake because he was so shaken by the experience. He now lives in Norway.
He fucking left.
He was like, let me find the calmest country I can live in where Joe Exotic cannot get me.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and actually, I read an interview with the directors of the docuseries who also said they had several shots of Joe and other people just shooting animals in the head, but they didn't show them because they were afraid. They wanted the audience to see what was happening, and they were afraid if they made it too bloody, people wouldn't watch.
Yeah,
because that's what's happened with a lot of documentaries where they want you want to expose the truth, but the truth is people don't want to see that.
Right.
And so yes, we know that Joe killed many animals just because he was mad, because he didn't like them, because they were an expense. So this idea that he was just this guy that loved cats and such so much, that wasn't it. You know.
Carole also sues Joe's mom, and he creates a GoFundMe to save her house, which. Carole, fuck you.
Yeah, fuck off,
Don't come
Carole.
after somebody's
Come on.
elderly parents. Like, they need their, like, fuck, leave the parents
that
alone.
That woman was so clearly sick, and she's sitting there shaking as she's trying to hold her husband's hand.
And Joe, like, got her involved in shit, which, like, that's not the parents' fault.
Yeah.
Like, leave the parents alone.
That's a bullshit.
It's hard because you see both sides because, of course, like we said, I mean, Joe's shooting mannequins that are Carole Baskin, props. And so, of course, she's angry. But then at the same point, she wants this $1 million from him, and he can't produce $1 million. And also, he's spent 20 years of his life making money on exotic animals, which is what you want him to stop doing. But how can he stop doing it if you want $1 million from him? He's kind of like, he is stuck in this situation, and she doesn't need that $1 million.
No,
and even if she
doesn't.
gets it, the zoo isn't going to be shut down. And also, he has 227 tigers there. So where the fuck are they all going to go, Carole? Like, it's just like she got stuck on this idea that if she got money from him, he'd have to shut down the zoo. But, like, maybe he needed some help. Like, maybe if she had provided a way to, I mean, I don't know. He also was, like, out of his mind and clearly didn't want to give the animal rights people any of his tigers.
Right.
But also, like, I don't know, it just seems like she wanted the zoo to be shut down, but like, how do you shut down a zoo with 227 tigers?
I think she was also just as vindictive and petty as Joe.
Yeah.
She was vindictive.
And I get that she was mad because
she was just
shooting.
smarter about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She didn't go on live and be like, "Oh, this is what I'm gonna fucking do to Joe."
Yeah, she was more evil because she knew that she could successfully sue him and she could win, and then she could take him for everything that he had. But his parents, I think that's one reason why the audience turned so hard against Carole. Like, the stuff about her husband, like, that's a lot of speculation. You can wonder. But seeing someone sue another person's elderly parents,
shaking parents who needed this money to live the rest of their lives. Like, this was their retirement probably. Like, they spent their retirement fighting this lawsuit. Like,
exactly.
Fuck you, Carole. That's bullshit.
Yeah, that was needlessly cruel. And that's what shows you the kind of person that Carole really is.
And that's why we say that all allegations on here are just our own opinions and not proven in a court of law and have no bearing on any criminal investigations.
So next up, we meet Jeff Lowe, which is the swinging, self-declared millionaire. Little pussy gets you a lot of pussy. Jeff Lowe.
That was his famous line.
So he comes in to save the zoo.
Jeff Lowe who sleeps with an Oakley hat and a bandana on his head. But you know what? He's gonna make 1,000 fucking face masks with all those bandanas now.
That's true.
I mean, we don't have. I'm trying to make face masks at home, and I'm like resorting to pillow sheets. But he's got all the bandanas he needs. Do you think? But also, he's stupid enough that he's gonna keep wearing them on his head and not ever put them on as a mask.
That's true.
I mean, no. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, that was it. We're on to episode 5 now.
All right, moving along.
Make America Exotic Again. Clever title. Yeah. Very clever.
And also where Joe really, truly spins out of it.
Yeah, this is where it starts to like... Oof.
So Jeff Lowe is the quintessential con man and looks like he's been running a con since the day he was born. And he really does. I don't know how anybody looked at this man and was like, you have a lot of money. I'm going to trust you.
Only Joe would look at him and
I literally looked at this man and I was like... He looks like the weird guy up the street that lived in Gary, Indiana. There is not one thing about him that I would look at and be like, you are a millionaire. I trust everything that's coming out of your mouth.
He looks like every biker in Indiana.
Yeah. So in the mid-2000s, he claimed to work for the musical legend Prince and sold illegal t-shirts with Prince's logo. He was sued by the star, and the singer's lawyer told the newspapers, I'm not going to call him a liar, but based on any information I have, he never worked for Prince, unless you call getting sued working for him. But the lawsuit didn't slow him down one bit. In 2008, he swindled the citizens opposed. He swindled the citizens opposed to domestic abuse out of $1 million worth of merchandise, which Lowe later resold for a profit. And that's all just a peek at the laundry list of cons the man has run over the decades.
So, yeah, I mean, like, I could not get into he's been in and out of prison. And I'm not even judging a person that's been in and out of prison, but he's a con man.
Right.
This isn't a person who has been he was railroaded by the cops. Like, he did all of the cons that he did. And everything in his life was a lie. Like, him taking a picture of him next to the plane. Like, anybody can run up to a fucking plane and take a picture.
Right.
But Joe Exotic was so caught up with that. Mm-hmm. He's like, I went into the mansion and they had a pool in there and he just had stacks of money everywhere. Like, that is clearly a guy who's trying to portray an image that isn't real.
But Joe also is like has no sense of what actual reality is either, of course. So of course he's buying into this person that's doing the same thing, only bigger and better.
Yeah.
You know?
So Joe was definitely the right man. Jeff Lowe was definitely the right man for Joe to transfer ownership of a zoo to. Here are some of the other moments from episode 5. This is the episode that we find out that Joe is going to run for president in 2016.
So he was the first openly gay man to run for president, not you, Pete Buttigieg.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So Joe runs for president and he hires the only other gay man in Oklahoma, Josh Dial, who was his campaign manager and also a manager at Walmart selling Joe ammo, which I just love that. I love all of that.
I love Josh being like, so he asked me to be his campaign manager and I was like, that's my dream job. Like, really, Josh? I mean, maybe a campaign manager is a dream job, but think about it.
Right. And then I love how he talks about like how traumatized he was from being Joe's campaign manager. And I'm like, you literally sold this man ammo and explosives like every day at Walmart.
I know.
Where did you think this was going to go?
But also, as a gay man in Oklahoma, he was like, well, this guy's gay.
That's true. I'm sure
He's
there was
giving
some.
me a job and he's gay, so I guess I'll take it. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe he was like, I can put it on a resume. Nobody's going to know. I don't know.
We meet Alan Glover, the eventual hitman, who is shady as fuck from the second. He's the shadiest of them all from the second you meet him. Like, but I don't know.
He is so creepy right away.
Yeah. He's the guy that, like, if I'm walking down the sidewalk and that guy's walking, I'm like,
yeah, let me cross the street and walk on the other side.
Yeah. Joe gets attacked by a tiger trying to eat his shoes. Oh, this was hard. I couldn't watch this part. That was hard for me to watch.
Because that was, I mean,
I know.
And everybody just watched.
Exactly.
Lowe claimed that he was on Joe Exotic's life insurance policy, and that's why Joe blamed him for the cat trying to eat his shoes. Jeff's wife, Lauren, says that Joe used to give the cats shoes for toys, and that's why the cats were chasing him. Which, I mean, but everybody wore shoes around the cat, so that doesn't make, that's not. Lauren, I'm sorry, but nobody's taking you. No.
Lauren, you need to get the fuck out
Lauren,
of that
just don't, please. Yeah.
Get your kid and get out of there.
Carole tells us how to get a tiger to eat a person. Psst, use sardine oil.
I love that she was very exact. She knew exactly what she was going for.
And also the laugh. The laugh that she does with
sardine oil is such an obscure. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's like a common thing in the tiger world. You know, maybe. But that's a really specific obscure item.
She just whipped that out and then. Carole, you don't get it. People really think you're guilty. Like someone who is her PR person, right? Like the same person that's Joe Exotic's apparently.
Mm-hmm. Jeff says Joe told him he was dying with 2 years left and wanted Jeff to take over the zoo. Okay, Joe, that is not in the documentary. I just learned that right now.
But this next part I got from Robert Moore.
From Robert Moore. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Joe once raised money for himself, telling folks he was dying from prostate cancer. Turns out he had a bad outbreak of herpes. No word if he refunded the money.
Yeah, and I have a picture of that, but haven't even added it because it's so gross. Because
I don't want to see I don't want to see that.
And he's covered. That's from Robert Moore. Anyways, he's covered, but it's true. So Joe went around for 2 years telling people he was dying of prostate cancer, and really he was just having these outbreaks. But I'm not saying like Jeff Lowe is a con man, we know that, but I also think that he saw an opportunity because he thought Joe was dying and he could take over his zoo easy, and then he realized this motherfucker conned me. He's not really dying. He's just using this to get more money.
They were both conning each other constantly and like just doing shit jobs.
Exactly.
So Joe and Jeff wanted to build a bisexual strip club called Tigers and Dreams. Jeff borrowed construction equipment from a man named Joe Barth, which he then turned around and sold. Barth sued Jeff and the next day, Barth's home burned down.
Yeah, Barth sued him to get his equipment.
I mean, imagine that. You're like, here, you can borrow my construction equipment. And then he just fucking sells it.
Yeah. And then when you sue him, then like the amount of homes that have burned down in this series, like so much fire.
Jeff Johnson interviewed in Tiger King. Who's that gets interviewed? I can't.
Hang on, I want to try to expose. I don't remember. He was like a small bit part. Oh, he was very small. He's just one of those random people.
I want a picture of him.
You'd have to look it up then.
Well, no, you're the researcher. Look it up later. And
okay, I'll get it to you. When you see it, but he's probably in there 5 times in the whole documentary. Yeah. He probably has like 10 minutes worth of stuff.
Well, it's important because he tried to expose Jeff and Joe as frauds in an online campaign. Joe and Jeff threatened Johnson, and when he didn't back down, his house mysteriously burned to the ground.
Everybody's houses are just burned down.
So there's a lot of arson.
The fact that everybody's house is burning down, and some people are like, Joe Exotic would never burn down his own
But
place.
Again, remember the guy that's investigating all these cases is Joe's limo driver, who's just like driving Joe around investigating the cases. And then
he's like driving Joe to the house to burn the house down.
He's like, well, Joe, did you do this? Joe's like, I sure as hell didn't. Maybe it was that bitch fucking Carole Baskin. He's like, sounds good to me, Joe.
Yeah.
So these are other things we find out in episode 5. We find out that Joe has a Prince Albert piercing on his penis and that he uses padlocks because he can't get things big enough to clip through it. So that's... Woo!
Nope.
Heavy.
Nope.
Okay. Also, did you know in Provincetown there's a hotel called the Prince Albert Hotel?
I didn't know that.
There you go. Fun fact, guys. John left Joe for a girl at the zoo. Travis committed suicide in front of Josh Dial.
That was ruled an accidental suicide.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was?
Yes, it was ruled an accidental suicide because right before he was telling the guy it doesn't fire unless the thing's in it. So he was just showing the guy that it's not going to fire.
Yeah.
And then he was just showing him like, watch, it won't fire. Boom.
I mean, yeah. You can tell though, there's a lot of instability in his, his mental health.
It's hard because he's very depressed. And even if it was accident, like he's so like like hyped up on, he's so filled with drugs, like he doesn't even know what he's doing. Like he's just.
I felt so bad for that campaign manager.
Oh,
like
Josh?
you could see his face. He was like,
I mean,
Like,
it's
what
crazy
else you
because it
do?
looks like it's a still frame, but you can see the time
Right.
going on the top of the camera.
And he
Like
just
that whole
can't
time,
move.
he's just like
for like 2 minutes, he just straight up was just like,
And
No.
he won't even go over by the body because he's just
I know.
like so scared, man.
Ugh.
Oh god, this
Okay.
guy just wanted to get out of Walmart. Okay,
I understand. I probably would have taken this.
Like, I'll be your campaign manager, sure.
It's okay. Well, it's not okay. But also for Joe, it's okay because 1 month after Travis died, he met a 19-year-old named Dylan Passage. And also, as soon as Dylan showed up on the screen and talked the first time, Evan and I look at each other and go, well, he's gay.
Yeah.
You can't lie about that one.
Yeah.
Joe drops out of the 2016 presidential race and runs for governor, earning 19% of the vote.
19%.
Well, Trump is president, so anybody can
Yeah,
win fucking
clearly.
anything, clearly.
19% is a huge chunk when you
Fuck, I
consider
mean,
it.
yeah, like that's crazy.
Especially because he ran as a libertarian. He didn't even run
Exactly.
as a Democrat or a Republican.
And
so
he ran
like,
with 3 people. So again, like the more people, the more your
Well,
percentage is going to go down.
Do his campaign. Can you do it?
My name is Joe Exotic. I am gay as a $3 bill. I'm broke as shit. Some bitch down in Florida is trying to sue me, and I'm running for president. And he used that as his promo. Josh, what are you doing?
I probably would have voted
Josh,
for that just because I would have been like,
Josh was telling him, Joe, I don't think this is the image we want to put. And Joe
don't
was
do
like, do you want to fucking work here?
He's like, Josh, you slap my face on the front of some condoms and you pass them out to everyone
Oh, yeah,
now.
the
and pass out some sex Joe with it too.
yep.
So in episode 6, we find out Joe is being investigated by the feds for
You didn't read
misappropriation of
the
funds
great name of the
during
episode.
this campaign. The noble thing to do, which is where creepy Chucky doll guy is like, I thought about it, and I thought it was the noble thing to do. I'm like, dude, you just didn't want to fucking go to jail. There was nothing noble about it. Also, look at this. The sun is coming out a little, everyone, and here in Rhode Island, it's been raining for like, I don't know, what do you think, a week straight?
It's been wonderful.
It's been awful. It's adding to my
The more depressing the
situational
environment, I'm
depression.
like, this is
The more his
great.
depression lives.
It seems the government was looking into a lot of exotic animal farms, most likely due to pressure from Carole Baskin and her followers. Everyone begins to feel the pressure of the investigation, and people start pointing the finger at Joe, who's the easiest and most obvious target. We meet a fellow Joe called Chucky, known legally as James Garrettson, who owns a tiger liquidation business. Oh, I didn't know that's what he did.
That's what that business is. That weird business that he's sitting in. It's called Tiger Liquidation Business.
No shit, he decided to do the noble thing.
Right? He's like, let me get out of this. Some of the other moments that went down as things escalated were as follows. Joe and Jeff have a large fight after Jeff confronts Joe for embezzlement, probably trying to gain evidence for the feds to cover Jeff's own ass.
Yeah. So, remember that fight where it's just conveniently recorded, and Jeff's like, and you forged my name like 49 times, and you stole $336,000, and it's very specific stuff that you wouldn't have in a normal argument. So,
Also, Jeff Lowe because like he tries to paint this picture that he went to Las Vegas to try to sell Cubs and do the bus thing, and he didn't know. Like, dude, Las Vegas isn't another fucking, it's not China. Like, you can very easily still know what people are doing with your money in Oklahoma. Like,
right.
As soon as he went to Las Vegas, he never checked his bank account. He never like checked in with what was going on with his money. Like, if you did that, you were a fucking idiot. I mean, you knew he was running for presidential office. You didn't think to check in about where he was getting that money. Like, I thought that part was so like staged from him. Like that he clearly filmed that part on purpose.
Yeah,
so, like,
it was all staged.
Yeah.
well, I think that he thought it's not that Joe was a patsy, but he wasn't quite as much of a patsy because Joe was too dumb to be a complete patsy. Now, I don't want to say too dumb, but like he was just too ornery to be a complete patsy.
Wait, what's Patsy?
Someone that you can just use. So Jeff Lowe, I think, thought he could use Joe and then realized he couldn't as much. So Joe sells as many animals as he can, and he and Dylan flee. And this is around the time that the plot to assassinate Carole Baskin comes into play, and Joe supposedly tries to hire Alan, creepy Alan, for
Who is
$3,000.
Jeff's like best friend.
Yeah, exactly.
And who Joe vehemently hates the entire time.
True. Can't
so
stand
I don't know
Alan.
why he then decides to hire him as a hitman. Also, he's an awful hitman.
Yeah. So,
And also they show, I don't know if you have this in here, but they show footage of like the recorded calls, and they're like, yeah, make sure you say this because we're trying to get Joe in trouble and blah, blah, blah. So like the whole thing's a setup, you can tell.
well, it is a setup, and they know that it's a setup. They know it's a setup, but it's just Jeff Lowe trying to cover his ass, and he's trying to save his friend Alan, who Alan probably never had any intention of killing Carole Baskin. He probably was just going to take the money and leave.
Right.
You know?
And he even goes and he just goes to like strip clubs and parties and does drugs while he's gone.
Exactly. So, yeah.
So Gerritsen decides that turning on Joe is the noble thing to do and partners with the feds to catch Joe trying to hire a hitman. In truth, Gerritsen was probably trying to get out of legal trouble. He said the feds had him on an illegal lemur.
So, there was probably more.
Oh, there was definitely a long list of things. This guy was as crooked as anybody else.
They were all crooked. So, go ahead.
Oh. Alan claims he traveled to Florida to kill Carole, but then chickens out. The feds get hidden records of Joe planning how Carole should die. Joe pretends he and Dylan are in Belize by posting fake photos of them online.
That's great because the water is clearly murky and clearly like on the shores of the United States.
Joe is arrested in a parking lot and taken to jail, and his infamous mugshot is taken. Pause. Wait, I have one more thing to say. What was my thing I was going to say? No, it was really good. No.
Well, why didn't you stop and say it while you were reading it?
Quiet.
I like that they edited Trump's face on this picture, too.
Oh, I love that.
I know. I just love the whole thing where he's like, Dylan standing in the water and he's like, #Belize.
Right.
Like that was going to be enough to throw the feds off. They're never going to figure out this plan, Dylan. They'll never catch us now.
I don't remember what I was going to say, but...
and poor Dylan, he's like 19, maybe 20 at this point, and he's like, this guy probably knows what he's doing. He's got money. He's older. Like, I'll just trust him and go with whatever.
Like every one of his other husbands besides Brian, every other guy that Joe dated was a young kid that he could use and he could manipulate. And, Dylan needs to wake the fuck up and get out of that,
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say that also while the feds are trying to take down Joe, I have mixed feelings because Joe deserves to be in prison because he owns 227 tigers and couldn't take care of them. Like, I'm sorry, like, at the bottom line, like, those animals deserve so much
to be in
better.
Prison for so many
There's
reasons.
so many reasons. I know, exactly. But also, so do all those other people. And that gets me so annoyed is I'm like, fucking the hitman can't even be in jail. Like,
right.
he was gonna be a fucking hitman. Doesn't that get him jail time?
Well, that's the thing. They all turned on Joe because they were like, if we all turn on him, we can all get plea deals or we can all get immunity. And then, they even say in the recordings, they're like, remember, this is to get Joe in trouble. If you don't do this, you're going to be in trouble too.
Yeah.
It's all manipulation and bullshit.
What pisses me off is this bullshit on the feds' part because they are so fucking lazy. They took the easiest person.
Right.
Like, Joe Exotic was the easiest person that they could take down. Try to take down Doc Antle. That's going to be a fucking nightmare. Even Jeff Lowe was smart enough to evade them. But they went for the easiest person. And I don't know if that was just a start and then they're going to keep going.
Well, I think I saw somewhere that there was a lot of stuff. I heard that there might even be like a part 2 to this because there's so much shit going on still.
Well, I hope there is because I think it's bullshit if Joe... Like, I think Joe deserves to be in prison too. I just don't think he's the only one deserves to be in prison.
And one thing I wish with the whole documentary is at the end they do this like 5-minute clip about how tigers belong in the wild and there's more tigers in captivity than there are in the wild and stuff. But I wish they had just simply put like a link or a place that you could donate to like actually do some good.
Big Cats Rescue.
No, don't say that. No, that's what I mean. They never, just like at the end of every TV show that talks about suicide, they put the link for suicide prevention. Like that's one thing that really irked me is like you have this whole show and hopefully people can see the injustice that's happening to these exotic animals and all the other unjust things. But like you couldn't have also, I think I'm close enough. No?
No, see, you're acting like I'm
but you're push.
I cannot. There's a thing here.
I just feel like I'm talking so close to your face. I feel bad.
I'm fine.
Okay. So I just wish that the documentary, they went through all these lengths to like show all of this subculture and injustice, but then they just missed the mark.
Yeah.
But if you would put a simple link of like, to help rehabilitate tigers, please donate to this link, you could have raised how much more money?
Right.
You know, because people would have clicked on it. They would have just watched that whole thing and been hopefully just as disgusted as, you know, most of us were. So anyway.
So skip the last point and just go to episode 7 because it wraps into it.
Okay. So the last episode is episode 7, which is titled Dethroned. In the final episode of the docuseries, we watch the feds build a case against Joe and eventually sentence him to 79 years in prison. Several of Joe's former employees are brought in to testify, and we see where the rest of the characters in this strange tale end up. And I want to say that it's kind of fucked up because every single person is saying that they're saying this stuff so they don't get in trouble. Like nobody's saying like, oh, I'm testifying because I believe this is wrong. They're all like, well, I'm testifying so I don't get in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here are the conclusions to the story that is Tiger King. Jeff brings Tim Stark down from Indiana to help him with their new zoo. Surprisingly, if anybody's shocked, Jeff leaves all the work to Tim and Tim leaves.
Right, Tim's so mad at the end. He doesn't get enough of a role. I want to see, we're going to talk at the very end who should play who in the eventual movie. But Tim Stark, I feel like, is a good character in himself. Very interesting.
Oh, yeah, with them sharing that fucking sandwich with his little monkey on his back.
Oh my God, that was what do you mean ew? That was cute.
That is disgusting.
Why? I share my food with my cat sometimes. I'm like, come on, a little bite.
And then you eat after they ate? Paul, don't do that.
I would love to have a monkey like that. That was my plan in Costa Rica until fucking COVID-19 canceled that. I was going to have a lot of fun with the monkeys. We were going to share food. We were going to share some marijuana. And
Maybe
we were
you could find Don if you do eventually get down to Costa Rica. Just get a look out for her.
Actually, David's aunt lives in Costa Rica, and I wanted to message her a picture and be like, have you ever seen this man?
They definitely haven't tried that before. David's aunt's going to find him.
You never know.
20
her boyfriend
years.
is native to the island. He's lived there his whole life, and he's a tour guide.
There we go.
You never know.
There we go.
Right. Chucky.
So James, Chucky, is upset Jeff didn't partner him with the zoo. Everybody wants to be the biggest, but nobody focuses on being the nicest. That's James Garrettson's quote for the thing.
Which, Mr. Noble thing to do. I mean, I don't know.
Dylan is still hanging on to a relationship with Joe, and I found him online. He's going to like all these raves and stuff now. There's just videos of him like dancing and living his best life.
There you go, Dylan.
So I'm sure he's like doing his own thing, but who knows?
Yeah.
Josh Dial takes off and has been in therapy for quite a while describing the events as the most traumatic of his life.
I mean,
of course, because he witnessed somebody.
Jesus Christ.
I mean,
after all the abuse that he went through, the final thing was watching Travis die.
Oh, let me do this one.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
love this one. Eric, the zookeeper, Cowie was his name. Eric Cowie, the zookeeper with the long hair, who seems to be passing out from alcohol and drugs in his final interview, is surprisingly still alive. Have you ever walked a lion? Ever walked a tiger? Motherfucker, man. Yeah.
Is that the one that was in the bathtub?
That's the hitman.
We're gonna get to him.
Cowie's the guy that lights the cigarette while pouring the gasoline into the different containers.
At the end, he's so fucking out of it,
gosh.
and he's just like looking at pictures of tigers, and that's what. You ever walked a lion? Walked a tiger, motherfucker. And he just passes out on the bed, and I assume they just let themselves out of the apartment and lock the door behind him.
I know, right?
So the James Garrettson is his. Oh no, wait. John Finley, the husband, testified against Joe and has been deeply wounded by the whole experience. Today he is engaged to a woman and he co-parents his daughter. He has a new set of teeth and has fully covered all of his tattoos that have Joe on it. I feel so bad for John because John, through the whole thing, even in his interviews after, he just is such a humble guy who just like was just doing the best that he could in his situation, and now he's out of it and he just wants to be done with it. He just wants to move on.
Mm-hmm.
James Garrettson, Chucky, is his own hero and rides away on a wave runner.
That was like my favorite scene.
It's the most Indiana scene, Lake Michigan, right there, just riding away on your wave runner.
Oh my God.
Go ahead, Paul.
Alan Glover, the hitman, doesn't so much as end up with probation.
Doesn't even so much, yeah.
Yeah, which is bullshit. Like, you were literally going to go murder this person supposedly with all this money and like there's nothing. And the final interview with him ends with him inexplicably taking a bath while the camera rolls. while the cameras roll. Why was he taking a bath? Why were they? They're like, okay, so for this last scene, we just think it'd be really great if you just climbed in your bathtub.
No, I don't think so. I think they were trying to get a final interview, and he starts taking his clothes and filling in their bathroom like, Alan, maybe we could just finish this up real quick. He's like, no, I'm taking a fucking bath. You want the interview? You can watch me. And they're like,
that's probably what happened.
Okay. And I told Samantha I was so like desensitized at that point that it was a full minute of watching him in the bathtub before I was like, wait, the fuck, is this guy in the bathtub?
Yeah, that's how I was too, because I was watching the scene and I didn't think anything of it, and then I did the same thing. I was like, wait, what?
Jeff Lowe and his wife had their baby, and yes, the nanny, a young, attractive woman, has stayed on. That's disgusting.
It is.
They continue to run the zoo, and also run the zoo should be in quotations because
run quote
exactly.
quote. Yeah, he's like I said, he's definitely trying to be his own Doc Antle. That's how he fancies himself.
Right.
But yeah.
Doc Antle, I love this. Doc Antle has his sanctuary raided and says it's all part of a different investigation that doesn't involve him. He says that it involves these 3 lions that are on his property, but they want to know where the lions came from originally, so they have to investigate the lions on his property. Dude.
They raided you.
They raided you.
They could have just asked you where you like,
right.
What the fuck you talking about? They just wondering where they came from. That's not how it works.
So John Rinke was never called to testify and still adamantly defends Joe.
Which is why he wasn't called to testify.
But that is kind of surprising, though, because he was there the entire time.
Yeah.
Regardless of how he would present. Like, I'm surprised the defense didn't call him. Like, nobody called him. That is kind of bizarre.
It is very bizarre that the defense didn't at least use him as a witness. Rick Kirkham, and I watched the interview with him, and it's like he deeply regrets ever working for Joe and for justifying the abuse that he saw. He expresses immense remorse for everything. He even said he's like I deserved it. It's karma because I stayed too long, and I thought I just kept my mouth shut because I wanted this to be my retirement. And so there is a God, and the God came back and he judged me for that. Like he's very sad about what happened.
Carole Baskin testified in Joe's trial. The case around her husband's mysterious disappearance has been reopened.
Yes, so
which we knew was going to happen. I mean,
they're getting, I think, like 6+ tips a day.
Really?
Wow. So I think something's going to come of it. Who knows?
And Joe Exotic has sued the state of Oklahoma for $94 million and every person involved in his indictment. He is appealing his sentence.
So there's our characters. Do you want to finish with the quote, or do you want me to the thing?
I'll read it. Well, in the series recap with this quote from lead director and creator Eric Goode. I have to say, Joe is unique. We all know that. But blaming your sexuality or your past on your current acts is really unfair. Sure, he's gay, but just think about how many other gay men are in Oklahoma and every other state in the country. To say that it makes it justified is really unfair. Frankly, I think that Joe was just an absolute egomaniac and narcissist who inflicted a terrible amount of pain on people and the animals. And that's what matters. To blame your sexuality or your relationship with your family is not an excuse. So I have to say, for people who are looking at the series saying Joe is an anti-hero or Joe should be released from prison, Joe did real wrong. I'm not one who thinks that people should be locked up and thrown away the key. Joe should pay for those crimes, and I think he should be reformed. And I don't think that the justice system is a punitive system rather than a reformative system, but I think he needs to do his time and really think about this.
Yeah. So this is from the man that followed him for 5 years. And, it's just saying, because a lot of things like Joe repeatedly, again, all stuff that was cut out would blame stuff on his sexuality and his childhood. And he had a horribly abusive childhood. From the age of 5, he was sexually abused. But it doesn't, you don't get to be an asshole,
He talks at the beginning about how his, dad said, don't even come to my funeral and shake my hand on it or whatever. But then a few episodes in, his parents are also being sued for millions of dollars because Joe clearly has been taking all their money and putting their name on everything. So if it was that bad when you came out to your parents, clearly you've had some kind of reconciliation.
Right.
So it's just, I don't know. I feel like that there's a lot of excuses that he found.
He always found a reason to justify. Yes, he had a traumatic life, but he always found a reason. So were all the people that worked for him. They all had traumatic lives as well, and they weren't going around being assholes. Mm-hmm. So, So we're going to end quickly with our ideas of who we think should be the actors in the eventual, I said biopic, but the eventual movie that's going to come to Hollywood. I I put some suggestions there, but who do you think should play Joe Exotic?
I mean, Dax Shepard. Dax Shepard.
I don't know any actors or actresses, so I'm looking at this list and I don't know a single one of these people.
Paul's going to be useless in all of this. I think that Danny McBride would be the best Joe Exotic, but I'd take Dax Shepard. I would. Carole Baskin. Kate McKinnon has already been slated to play Carole Baskin.
What about Adele? Oh, no, she's too thin now.
Singer.
Adele would still, Adele prior to her weight loss would make a great Carole Baskin.
No, yeah. But Lisa Kudrow would also be.
Lisa Kudrow would be an amazing Carole. Also, I heard Allison Janney. She would make a Carole. Great. Mm-hmm. Someone said Ray Romano for Howard Baskin, which I thought was really good.
I don't know who that is. You can go to the next couple.
Jeff Lowe, David Morse. He always plays a bad guy. He was a long time. I think I have the right person. Was the father in Footloose, and now he plays a bad guy. I could have the wrong person. They look a lot alike. Or Woody Allen, who I also think would make a great Tim Stark. You're so useless, Paul. What about a singer? Any suggestions for any of this?
Nope.
Oh, God. There's been suggestions for Doc Antle, everything from Steve Martin and Jim Gaffigan to Ron Perlman and Jack Black. Then for James Garretson, I think Zach Galifianakis would make...
hands down. Hands down.
The only person that should play James Garretson. And I want to see him on that Wave Runner. Alan the Assassin, I think Creed from The Office would be great, Alan. I don't know his name.
You didn't look up his name?
I didn't. I was finishing this up. And then someone said Michael Rooker, who's from The Walking Dead. Channing Tatum for Jen Finley, which if you see Channing Tatum with his hair buzz and then next to Jim Finley, like John, not Jim. Yeah, sorry. John Finley. And then finally, Dylan Passage, Reed Ewing, which is Dylan from Modern Family. And
that's a perfect fit.
That's a Dylan Passage. So we'd love to hear from you who you think should be playing. Maybe tell Paul to watch some TV or something. I don't know.
I watch things, but I don't know. I never have learned actors or actresses because for me, watching a show or a movie, I want to be fully in the fantasy. And I feel like if I learn these people and learn their nuances, it's going to take away from that fantasy.
Okay, but if you were going to cast one role of Carole Baskin, which drag queen would you use? If we were doing the drag reenactment of Joe Exotic.
For Carole Baskin, Ginger Minge.
Okay, Ginger Minge, you heard it here. So whenever we do the drag musical of Tiger King. Anyways, we've gone too long. We hope this is helping you in quarantine. We hope you've watched Tiger King.
As you can tell, we're all losing our minds.
Clearly. So any last things? Honey, do you want to say anything? You want to sign off to the audience?
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Queer Story, supported by the patrons of Your Queer Story. Thank you so much, patrons. And I would like you to keep listening, keep supporting the podcast, look at some great merch we have going. Supporting small online businesses is a great thing to do in this crazy world. And stay safe, don't get a lobotomy, and all of the other things that they oddly say at the end of this podcast.
People love it, okay?
Yeah. Are we doing it?
Yep, stay queer.
Don't get a lobotomy.
We love you, our little allied hookers.
Oh, succulent sapphis.
Resist the oppressors, our proud homocrats.
Have yourself a sodomy circus or a sodomy sanctuary. I don't know. What's the difference? Okay.
I don't know.
Bye.
Bye.